Welcome to Below the Line with Dr. Bennie Harris. The Chancellor of the University of South Carolina Upstate talks with top leaders about issues such as change, technology, education, and leadership. Please enjoy.
Hi, Don. I'm here with Don Bent. Don is the Chief Operating Officer of the Defense Segment of Oshkosh Defense. And I got to know Don early on when I first came to USC Upstate, and Don had just come to Spartanburg. They had done a site study and had decided that Spartanburg was a place that they wanted to stand up a new project. We're going to talk more about that project, but I want to first thank Don for sitting down with me. We'll have this conversation, and I want to jump right in. So what drew you, Don, into the automotive and defense industry more than 30 years ago?
Yeah, it's been a little while. So first of all, thank you for having me join you here today. What really drew me in was the technology that you see in the automotive industry. And, you know, the first time I walked into an automotive plant, I just felt like it was alive. I fell in love with it, and I've been in manufacturing ever since. And so that's what really drew me in, though, was the manufacturing floor and the technology you see in manufacturing.
Tell me a little bit about your background, too, Don.
Yeah, so my educational background is actually mechanical engineering, but I've always lived in manufacturing. And so I spent about 12 years with General Motors, and then worked in a couple of other companies, including Borg Warner and then Amcor Packaging. And then I've been with Oshkosh Defense for about the last 13 and a half years.
Okay. So in 1922, Oshkosh Defense faced a number of headwinds in its plan to build in the former Rite Aid facility the fleet of the next generation delivery vehicles for the U.S. Postal Service. You all won a very big contract. Can you walk me through that experience and how Oshkosh dealt with the obstacles and brought this whole project to fruition? And what's the status of it now?
Yeah, so in 2021, we actually won the contract, and we'd actually started looking for sites before that. We knew we needed close to 900,000 square feet, so that's over 20 acres under one roof for one manufacturing plant. And we found that in Spartanburg. So it was an existing facility, and we fell in love with the region, frankly, the whole area, the rich automotive history that's here, the workforce that's here, educational institutions like USC Upstate that are here. It was just really the perfect environment for us. And so we converted that factory over the next couple of years, and we are actually in production now on the very first next-gen delivery vehicles for the U.S. Postal Service. So we'll be touching virtually every address in America within the next few years as those vehicles roll out.
So you talked about technology, and tell us a little bit about the technology for this new vehicle, the Postal Service vehicle that we're doing.
Yeah, the Postal Service, that NGDV is really a state-of-the-art vehicle. It comes in actually two powertrain options. The same vehicle built on the same production line can be a full battery electric vehicle or an internal combustion engine vehicle, a fuel-efficient internal combustion engine vehicle. So based on what the U.S. Postal Service needs, we build those down the same line. So there's all kinds of additional safety protections in that vehicle as well. So there's accident avoidance, there's lane park assist, 360 camera systems, automatic braking systems. It's really designed to protect the postal delivery carrier as well as the public around them.
So what percentage of the vehicles will be electrical and combustible type?
Well, it's really up to the Postal Service. Initially, their initial thought was that they wanted 10% battery electric vehicles. They've dramatically increased that. They've talked about as much as 70% battery electric vehicles. And we built our facility with that flexibility in mind. We knew that technology would change over time, then demands could change. And so we can build whatever mix they need in that facility.
Okay. And how old are the current postal vehicles that we're looking at that come in front of my house every day?
Yeah, they average close to 30 years old, those vehicles.
I don't think I have a vehicle that lasts 30 years.
No, they were great vehicles at the time, but it is time for them to bring new technologies into postal delivery.
Okay, let's talk about that. When you design the plant, you design it for the future, not just for the vehicle you're building today, but the vehicle you may be building tomorrow. Talk about how that thought process.
Yeah, so I think a key on any manufacturing environment is to understand what is your market. We have the luxury of knowing that we'll be building there for 10 years, but you also want to consider what could change in the future. And so you try to build flexibility into that line. And so that as we laid out the plant, we actually went through over a dozen different full simulations of the plant and over 200 different layouts to try to come up with something that is efficient in the short term and gives us flexibility moving forward.
Okay. What are some other large projects you've been involved in, and what were some of the challenges and obstacles with those projects, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, for Oshkosh Defense, this is actually our second big launch in just the last 5 or 6 years. We opened in 2018. We opened a facility just outside of outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, and that's for our military vehicles. We were actually doing welding in that facility, and we learned a lot through that process. We learned a lot about how to change over a facility for a manufacturing environment, and we took all those lessons learned into this project. And actually, it really helped on our site search because we really knew what we were looking for in an environment like the Upstate that was already manufacturing rich and able to support our launch.
Okay. So in a site visit process, how do you land on the right location? What are some of the factors that you look at? You don't have to tell us your secret sauce, but definitely what are some of the factors that you look at?
No, I think I touched on some of them. First of all, you want a population that understands manufacturing a little bit, and we see that in the Upstate. There's a strong heritage of manufacturing in this region. You're also looking for the distribution capability, so being able to get material in and out of a facility. In this case, we were looking for an existing facility, so you're looking for the right space, the right square footage. You're also looking at the population in the region. Does the population have the right skill sets that you're looking for? Is the area growing? Can the area support that job growth that you're bringing into the region? So there's a lot of factors involved in that. In our case, there's also factors such as we have to ship those vehicles to where they're used. So building a facility in Alaska and then shipping all of those trucks back into the lower 48 wouldn't make a lot of sense. We tried to center that within the distribution network of where those trucks have to end up.
So the inland port, do they go to the inland port first?
Well, actually, we use the inland port mostly for incoming materials.
Okay.
So any material that comes in from international or from other regions can come into the inland port, and then we bring the parts in. But we'll actually ship out by truck or rail for everything within the U.S. It's a little bit unique, very different from, for example, a BMW, which is also here in the Upstate, where they ship so much internationally. Most of our trucks will stay right here in the U.S.
Okay. So from your location, you're distributing to the end users?
Correct. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so we actually distribute to 305 VMFs or vehicle maintenance facilities for the U.S. Postal Service throughout the country, and then they distribute to the local post offices from there.
We were talking about anticipating the future earlier. So at USC Upstate, we are looking at artificial intelligence and how we can improve our learning outcomes and how to embrace that as well. Where do you see that going in the automotive industry? How's artificial intelligence going to impact the automotive industry?
I think it's impacting it today. We're seeing it in the facility today. But I think artificial intelligence is something that people have to embrace. It's part of what we're doing today. And I don't think it's something to be feared. I think it's something to be respected and utilized. But in the facility today, for example, we use machine learning models, which is a subset of AI overall, to learn how an operator actually does their work and then can measure on an ongoing basis. The next truck comes down the line, are they having a problem as they're building, and then send a signal up, and you can respond to that station before you actually have a delay. And so we're using artificial intelligence or a machine learning model to give us quick feedback, faster feedback, learn how operators work, and then as that adjusts over time, the machine learning model will change with it. And so we are already using that. We're also using it, I mentioned the shipping distribution model. We're using machine learning model to analyze shipping costs and where the best and most economical way to ship these trucks will be. Because we can ship rail, we can ship by truck. What is the most economical way to do that?
So for those who are not in the industrial language or that technology, what is machine learning model? Tell me what that looks like.
Yeah, so basically a machine learning model is a complex algorithm that analyzes data, quickly learns the trends in that data and then gives feedback to you to be able to adjust. And so it's really basically just an analysis tool, but that then has a feedback loop, but that analysis tool changes over time. And so that's the difference between just an algorithm or a program and a changing program, a learning program.
So it's kind of teaching itself
Exactly.
over time. So with new information, it goes into another type of algorithm that improve based on the new information that it has.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's scary.
I don't think it's scary. I think it's exciting. I mean, I think it.
So you got machines teaching machine itself.
It is. It's teaching itself, but it's still all within the control of the operators using it.
Right now.
It is, yes. And so I think that's why it has to be respected. I think if you look under AI, there are so many great things that can come from it. But like any technology, there are bad things that can come from it. And so the key is to be understanding all of that and respectful of it. And in some cases, we may have to control some of that.
Has it ever gotten it wrong?
Well, yes, absolutely. I think that's demonstrated in society where ChatGPT gets things wrong, just like people can get things wrong. But I think that as time goes on and it develops, you learn to trust it more and more. As that model gets smarter and smarter, it can make fewer mistakes as well.
So the industrial engineering degree that I got way back when is just obsolete right now.
I wouldn't say obsolete. I think many of the core principles really still apply. If you take a look at an industrial engineering program today, it is very similar to what it was 20 plus years ago.
Yes, just say 20 plus for now.
But I think it also has to evolve. It has to develop. It has to change. AI is an example of that, where you have to say, okay, how is AI impacting how an industrial engineer works today? And I think AI is a tool that they can use to make their job better, faster, more efficient. Or I'll say a series of tools. AI isn't really just one thing.
So let's transition just a little bit. This is about you. Your volunteer work focuses a lot on hunger.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm really proud of the work that Oshkosh Defense has done over time. We have a program that we do every year. We're coming up on our 8th year of what we call the Hunger Games, where our departments compete against each other to raise money and food. And all of the money and food we raise stays in the communities where we are. And so, for example, in Spartanburg this past year, we raised, I think we had less than 50 people, and we raised over $8,000 that stayed right here in the Spartanburg region. And the reason that's so important to us is if you take a look at who receives food benefit, 90% of all households that receive food benefit have either children or the elderly or both. Mm-hmm. So the people who can help themselves the least today are the ones who benefit the most from food charities. And so to me, it's just a great way to take care of the communities that we work in. And I think it's something that you can see every day, the benefit to people.
Is there misinformation out there about food insecurity and hunger right here in the U.S.?
Well, I think so. I think what people don't realize is that the people most impacted are the ones who can't help themselves, the children and the elderly. And you think about, we've gone to the grocery store and you see how expensive food has become in the last few years. And you think about our elderly, people in our community who live on a fixed income.
Okay.
And their fixed income hasn't changed dramatically, but food prices have gone way up. And so it's been the largest influx of new demand to food insecurity has been from the elderly. And that's because as inflation has risen, their fixed income hasn't. And it's not something they could have prepared for 20 years ago. It's something that they're now victimized by now today. And it's something that we can be part of helping.
Okay. The workforce. What are the challenges with identifying skilled workers? You talk about the high-end technology that's taking place now. So the type of employee we hired in manufacturing 5 years ago are different than the type that we need to hire at all levels of manufacturing. So what are you seeing in the workplace right now?
Well, I think in the upstate, we're really encouraged by what we see. We see a really strong workforce. But what you're touching on is important, that people today have to have much stronger computer skills than they did 30 years ago when I started. And so that those skills are important. But when we talk about some of the things like automation and some of the AI and machine learning models, we need a stronger technical knowledge going into that. And so I think on all levels of the organization, we have a need for improved and increased technical knowledge across the board. And so that's something that we're doing differently. Just specific to manufacturing vehicles, EV is changing how we have to educate people, because EVs are high voltage. So now, instead of training a handful of electricians on high voltage, we have to train every team member who could come and impact that. And so that's just a different approach to what we're doing. So a little bit more technical training than we've ever done with manufacturing people.
So what are some of the major skills that people need? I was amazed. We hosted a talent forum here at USC Upstate last year, and I heard a lot of industry leaders talk about the types of skills that they need. It wasn't so much necessarily the book skills, but helping folks. And so we can teach some of that, but helping folks around critical thinking and communication and those type of things. How important are those skills and translate into them being able to participate in this new workforce?
Yeah, I think one of the skills that you're always hoping that you get from, for example, engineers, is problem-solving skills. And that's something that I think as higher education has developed, we hope in the future to see more problem-solving skills taught in college for those engineers. That's an example of where I'd like to see that a little bit stronger. The other thing that I think across the board, anybody that might end up in business needs to understand is finance. It's something that when an engineer says, hey, I have this great project, but if it doesn't have a good business impact, why that might get rejected, or why it might get delayed to the following year because of the financial situation of the company. Those are things that it's important for anybody going into any aspect of business to have some understanding. I think it helps in their job satisfaction because they can understand why decisions are made in the business, but it can also help them because they're making better decisions as they get into business. Leadership sees them making better decisions, they get more opportunities.
So it sounds like engineers or whomever need to come, whether even if it's a finance major coming to the environment, needs to appreciate the ecosystem of how the business is run. Yes. From a general perspective, not necessarily from a deep level, but definitely understand how it all connects.
Yes, absolutely. And so, for example, even somebody in HR needs to understand the financials of the business. The best HR leaders, human resource leaders that I've worked with were good business people first because they understood the financial impacts.
So is that one of the reasons when you first came, we talked about internships program and the needs for scholarships for students and working in, and you had one of our students this past summer who worked with you, and from my understanding of that curriculum, you rotated him around in several different areas of the business. Is it for that particular purposes in some ways?
Yes, it's really, first of all, internships are great for both the company and for the students, and I think for universities as well, because those students bring back knowledge from their work. But that rotation is important because I think a new graduate even coming out of school, or maybe an undergraduate who's still working on their degree, they may not know exactly what they want to go into. Mm-hmm. And so exposing them to a few different aspects of the business lets them see what do they like, what do they not like, what are they good at, what are they maybe they're not good at. And that gives them an opportunity potentially to adjust their plans for the future.
I think that's the value of internships and co-op type programs, is really help students say, am I on the right track? And what can I do more? What do I want more of? I love this. I got exposed to this. This is great. Let's talk a little bit about mentorship. How important is mentorship in your life personally? How important was it in your career?
I think mentorship is really critical because it allows you to think and talk and make maybe some assumptions with an independent voice who then can give you some feedback. It gives you another voice instead of just listening to the voice in your head, or voices in your head in some cases.
Okay. Voices.
But I think what it does is it allows you to potentially avoid mistakes, potentially learn without having to experience. And so when you have a great mentorship program, what you have is really a balance.
Okay.
It provides that mentee an opportunity to learn and to have basically some feedback. But I think for the mentor, in a lot of cases where I mentor team members, it allows me to learn too.
Yeah.
It allows me to develop, and so I think it's a win-win.
I actually heard her name is Carol Huddle. She was the editor of the Tennessee, and she did a speech for my class. I was teaching a servant leadership class, and she did a speech there, and she said that every leader should have a young mentor. And what she meant by that, she said the newspaper industry was very slow to change, to pivot, and it became antiquated in how they did things. They didn't realize that content would not be controlled just by reporters and newspaper, but content would be controlled by the end user, even on a little phone. So she said she has a young mentor. Her niece is her mentor. I think at the time her niece was probably in her early 20s. What do you think about that concept, having a young mentor to keep you fresh?
I hadn't thought of it specifically that way, but I think it's great. I think it's important for leaders to listen to people across the generations. That cross-functional, when you get a cross-function or a cross-section of society, to listen to and learn from people of this generation. As I take a look at the last 20 years, one of the things we've really adjusted is flexibility in the workforce, in flexibility for people's schedules. And so we look at it in Oshkosh as saying, if it doesn't hurt the company and we can provide flexibility, time flexibility for somebody, workplace flexibility, location flexibility, if it doesn't hurt the company, let's do that. And that flexibility is something that really was asked for by more recent generations. That's not how I grew up. But you see the value to the individual, their family, and the company when you do that. And so I think that concept is just terrific to say, what can we learn from the next generation? Because they're not, while we have these great experiences, they're not handcuffed with those experiences. And so their paradigms may be able to be a little bit different than ours.
Okay. Let's talk for the next 5 minutes about leading below the line. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes leaders, I'm the Chancellor at USC Upstate, you're the Chief Operating Officer for a major facility here in Spartanburg. And oftentimes the things that we see from a leadership perspective are the things that we can easily say, that's what we're leading. We're leading this conversation, you bring your team together. But often there are things below the line that we don't know about, or that people have anxiety about coming to the table and having a conversation about, or that get in the way of moving a new agenda forward. How do you lead? And give me an example of where you've had to figure out what actually is going on in order to move more effectively that initiative.
Yeah, I think you see that a lot as a leader. If you're really trying to stay in touch with your team, what you realize is that you can't know everything that's going on. And so what you're now looking for are indicators. So, are people, when you interact with people, are they not smiling? Do they seem worried? Is that your whole group that way? Are they very quiet? Are they free to ask questions? Are they not asking questions? Things that give you some insight into maybe something that's going on in your organization that you're not aware of. I think that there are some ways to counter that, and the best thing to counter that is to make sure you have a good, open relationship with people, that they feel comfortable with you. You as chancellor, you're probably some students that say, "It's the chancellor. I don't know if I can feel comfortable," but your approach with people makes them feel more comfortable, so they feel like they can then communicate with you and talk to you. And so encouraging and providing opportunities for people as a leader is important. And so in Oshkosh, we at times do what we call skip level meetings, where we meet with people at all different levels of the organization. And so for me, that's as simple as walking out on the production floor and just talking to people. And once they realize that you're just a person as a leader, they start to open up a little bit more, and then you can start to get a feel for what's really going on. So you start to look for those trusted resources on the floor, in the classroom, who really will give you a pulse of what's going on in the company or in the organization.
So you're at a point in your career now. Thank you very much. That's important. I continue to look at how to dig deeper on leadership as well. you're at a point in your career now where you can make some decisions about what I want to do next, what I want to have fun, how I want to change the world. But I find that's amazing that people who have had these amazing careers at the highest point in their organization want to do something to change the world, or want to do something that what they say is meaningful and impactful. Talk about your next.
Yeah, so for me, what I've always loved is seeing leaders develop. So when I have an opportunity to coach or mentor and develop leaders, and then watching them develop over time, and seeing that a leader that was a certain leader 5 years ago is so much better today, that is so rewarding. And so I just always been passionate about helping other people develop so that they can become the best form of themselves. And so for me next, I really want to be part of something that is changing the world, is helping that next generation of leaders. And I think that's important. I think it's really critical to try to pass on what I've learned, whether it's mentor, formal education, pass that information on so that they don't make the same mistakes I did.
I agree. I've heard leaders say that the monument they want is to see people achieve. They want to be able to pour into them and see their life legacy being lived out. Matter of fact, I heard a president of a university say that he measures his success by how many presidents are made as a result of coming through his organization. So he didn't feel threatened by someone growing to a point of leading another university. He saw that as an accomplishment, that he can say, I am impacting leaders all across the globe, which was an interesting way of looking at it as well. So I'm going to ask you a final question. Do you have a hero?
I do. I mean, I think if you take a look at history, one of my heroes historically is Benjamin Franklin, and one of the reasons is because he was a scientist. He was in manufacturing. He had a printing business. He also tried to give back through his country. But if I take a look at the modern day and who are my heroes, I have to say my wife is my hero.
Okay.
She was a teacher and then chose to stay home and raise our children, and then she now runs a horse farm and does that very well. And so
a horse farm, that's interesting. Did she grow up around horses?
She grew up loving horses, but didn't have them until she was in her 20s, and so to me she's my hero and my inspiration now.
I'm going to make sure she hears this podcast.
I think she'd appreciate that.
Y'all have children?
We do. We have 3 daughters. One
so
in
you're
North-
outnumbering the house a long time ago.
Yes, I was, but what a joy. I mean, it's one of the things I'm passionate about is that, for example, I'm a strong supporter of women in manufacturing. If you take a look at women in business today, I think you're seeing more and more successful female leaders, and I think that's really important to support women, to support people that are underrepresented, and so that has taught me a lot, seeing 3 girls grow up.
Yeah. So they had a lot of influence on how you see women in business and women in manufacturing and women creating opportunities as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and I first reported to a woman at GM, and immediately started to think about when my children grow up, what are the environment that they are going to live in. And so I think it's really important to have an environment where that's inclusive and that you embrace people for who they are, and that, I really believe that diversity of thought is really important. So having a diverse organization gives you a lot of different perspectives and you make better decisions. So.
Okay. So you're retiring soon.
Yes.
So what's next?
Well, I'm really hopeful to actually join the USC Upstate team. Actually, is what I'd really like to do.
Oh, I would love to offer you a job. That'd be.
Very frankly, I'm really inspired by what I see from USC Upstate. The feedback that you've invited me to give to the programs here. I think that USC Upstate is really at a position where they're trying to evolve to make their students better as they get into the work environment, and it's really to me, in business, inspiring to see an entire university that's looking to continually improve. I think that's a big key, and to see that excitement and innovation and energy, and it's just a great place. I think it's going to be a great place for students for a long time because of that environment.
I'm very excited about that, Don. You joining us here at USC Upstate and lending your expertise to help us develop. We do not have an engineering program, and so our goal is to launch our first engineering program within less than 12 months. And so your input into that has been really pivotal and critical, so I'm excited about that work and our supply chain logistics and our business. And so Don will be joining USC Upstate and helping us out as an executive in residence and as a distinguished professor of practice effective in March 1st, really. Yeah. So I'm excited about that work and that to be able to work with Don to learn from him as well. I have been here today talking with Don Benn, Chief Operating Officer for Oshkosh Defense here in Spartanburg. Don has done a phenomenal job in standing up a corporation and standing up an organization, rather, to really add to the ecosystem and the industry. You've hired over 1,000 employees?
We will hire over 1,000 by the time we're done, yes.
And very competitive salaries and wages that Oshkosh is investing in. So thank you so much for bringing that type of company to our community.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you being here and appreciate the invitation to come and talk.
Okay, thank you.
The Below the Line podcast is brought to you by the University of South Carolina Upstate. Look for our monthly write-up in Greenville Business Magazine, and for more information, go to uscupstate.edu.